Hi, my name is Holly. Starting at the age of 7, and my parents divorced, and it was really hard for me and my 3 other siblings. I had to move back and forth from Ohio to Florida, Florida to Ohio. So I spent the summers with my dad in Ohio, and then I'd spent time with my mom in Florida, and having a church life was definitely hard to balance. So mostly I would go to church and church camp during the summers in Ohio, and that's where I went to Southern Ohio Youth Camp, and it was awesome, and I loved it, and I met amazing people. But when I went back home to Florida, it was like I didn't really have a structured church life, so it was really hard. When I went to middle school, I was bullied a lot, and I didn't even know what insecurities were, but I learned that from being there, and then that's when I started to have a relationship with the Lord. And that summer, I think it was 8th grade, it was the end of middle school, I went back to Ohio, back to camp. And of course, when you go back to like a church service or a camp service, everything's great. But when you have to go back to reality, you feel like, there are things in the world that can distract you. And I felt like that's what happened when I went into high school. High school was when my anxiety got worse. I felt like I wasn't myself, and I didn't really have a structured church life. I was going to different churches, but I didn't find the right church for me. I thought boys would make me happy, and they didn't. And so around 11th grade, I started to have anxiety so bad where I'd miss weeks of school. I stayed in my room. I'd be super depressed, and I just remember journaling and writing down my thoughts, and hopefully one day I was praying that I would be able to share it to people. It was so hard where I remember one time I was in a corner having like a paper bag and trying to breathe through it because I couldn't breathe properly. There was another night where I felt like I just didn't want the pain through my chest anymore. I just felt like I couldn't really communicate to people, and I couldn't talk to anyone. And I remember like seeing this thing of pills, and I remember that I wanted to take it. I remember God telling me that everything was going to be okay, that He was going to protect me, and I just remember putting the pills back on the table. I'm very thankful for God helping me that time, because I feel like that was a very vulnerable time for me, and God was there every step of the way. And so I trusted Him, and I started going to a church called Christ Fellowship. It's in Florida, and my friends really encouraged me and helped me, and I really felt like God was doing great things. So then that following year, senior year, I was ready to graduate, and I was so excited, and I felt like the Lord was doing great things. Another hardship happened, and I had a friend pass away from suicide, and it was really hard for me because I felt really hurt and sad. But I realized that that wasn't God's fault. It was just a testimony that I can tell other people that are, younger or the next generation, that it's okay to go through this, that God's with you through it all. So I graduated, and I was going to church, but I felt like I wanted to run away. I wanted to go away. So I tried to join the Army, and God was telling me, do not do it. You have more in life to do this. I have more plans for you. So I prayed, and I ended up going to Lee University, and that is where I got involved in a lot of ministries like campus choir. I was a floor leader with the dorm that I lived in. So I eventually moved to Ohio after Lee University, and I started to go to Miami University, and that is where God has done a lot of things. I felt like I still had anxiety, but it wasn't as bad as it used to be. And I remember actually recently I felt the Lord speak to me, and He said that, everything's going to be okay, and anxiety is going to be defeated, and it's not going to control you anymore. And so I remember praying and staying up and telling God, like, I am going to get through this with your help. And ever since then, I've thought about like the stuff that I've been through, and I feel like if I didn't go through those things, I wouldn't have a testimony to share. I think another reason why it's so important to talk about your scars is because, people around you might be going through the same thing. My sister, she was 12 years old when she spoke about her depression and anxiety and suicide thoughts. And I think that there are people that really, really need to hear this, that you are loved and God loves you. And so I'm so thankful that God has brought me through it, because I could have said yes to so many things in high school or middle school, but I didn't. And I am so thankful that God has given me the people that I've loved in the churches. And when it comes to my scars, I share that as a testimony to people who feel like they can't be heard. And I'm so thankful for what God is going to continue to do through my life.